When it comes to roofing, experience matters. I'm Ron Bailey, bringing years of experience straight to your screen. From inspections to installs, I help show you how to protect your biggest investment, your home. So today, I wanted to touch on different profiles for metal. So a lot of people opt to switch to metal, but a lot of the times there's a little more that goes into it than you may think. So I'm just going to go over five of the main different profiles, and let's see what fits the situation that you're trying to tackle. So the most basic type of metal roof is going to be your corrugated tin, which is something you really just want to use on a shed or like a small outbuilding where it's okay if a little bit of water gets in from time to time. It's not something that's meant to be there forever. You're protecting lawn equipment. And I'll throw up multiple pictures of every kind of style that I'm talking about because I just don't have a lot of these big samples kind of handy with me. But that's the biggest application that you're going to use that for. Most suppliers are going to carry this stuff on hand, like your Home Depot, your Lowe's, because it's a very, very common do-it-yourself kind of deal. Going one step up from that is going to be your tough rib or your R panel. So tough rib is just traditionally used more for residential, and then your R panel can be used for commercial, but also can be used for residential. The biggest difference between these two is really just the profile of the panel itself. Both these panels are typically 3 feet wide. The length is obviously going to depend on the structure, how the gable is built, and the framing. So I'll throw up a picture of each. That way you can kind of see the differences in profiles. And that's ultimately just a choice you may want to pick for your aesthetic preferences. All three kinds of those roofing styles I just went over, the tough rib, the R panel, and the corrugated, are all going to be exposed fasteners. So what does that mean? That means it's not concealed, so those exposed fasteners are going to be driven through the face of the panel to where you're going to be able to see them. Traditionally, you may have a little bit more leeway as far as your corrugated metal and what kind of screws you can use, but typically you want to go with something called a Zac screw. What it is it has a rubber grommet on it that's actually encased by a little metal dome. I really opt, the stainless steel varieties are becoming much more popular. So obviously the biggest difference between the stainless steel screw and the regular steel screw is if that paint wears off, the color matches your panels, it's not going to rust. So now your screws actually come with a similar warranty to what your panels do, which is around 40 years typically, depending on the manufacturer and the gauge you're using. So those are really the screws you want to use. I think they're standard about 1.75 inches. You want to get plenty of penetration through the substrate that you're using. One step up from that is going to be your standing seam. So to give you guys an idea of standing seam, besides the picture I'm going to put up, is standing seam is usually what you're going to see on any commercial buildings, schools, just big industrial buildings. Standing seam is just the most common form of metal that you're going to see. Now, the biggest difference between the last kind of profiles I talked to and the standing seam is going to be the fact that the standing seam has concealed fasteners. So it's also just a much cleaner look. The ribs are typically going to be a little bit taller on this, so the profile is going to be a little bit different. Also, the length in between the panels is also typically going to be a little bit shorter. This is all going to depend on how many nails are going to be needed for this metal roofing system in general. Obviously, if you're in a coastal area, you need more fasteners. The profiles are probably going to be a little bit tighter to help kind of accommodate that. The last kind of metal roofing system I want to go over is something called stone-coated steel. And also you can have stone-coated aluminum as well. It's just not quite as popular because, as you can guess, the steel is a good bit stronger than the aluminum. So alongside your standing seam, this is what I would consider the Ferrari of roofing systems. A lot of you may see these pop up on ads on Facebook and Instagram. So these are your like 4-foot panels on average. These are the ones that can be installed either direct to deck or on battens, which I'll get into in a second. These are the most highest echelon, meaning you can get up to 210-mile-an-hour warranties with these ones. They're typically going to be class 4 impact rated, which means it can withstand 2 inches of hail. Just to backtrack a little bit on the hail warranty, usually your standing seam is about 24 gauge, and just to put that in perspective, that can easily withstand 2 inches of hail. And you can get tough rib and R panel that thick as well. It's just usually not needed or standard. The thicker the gauge, the lower the number, which means it's going to also be more expensive to produce and also a little more labor intensive because it's going to add a lot of weight to the panels in general. 1 to 2 ways to install a metal roofing system is with or without battens. Yes, there's advantages and disadvantages to both, but it really just depends on where you're located in the US. If you're not in a high humidity area, the direct to deck is fine. There's no scenario where one is necessarily 100% better than the other. It just really depends on your preferences, because a couple of the advantages to using something called battens, which is essentially just using 2x2 wood strips across the deck, is a lot of the times if you're looking up at a building from the inside, sometimes you don't have to have an actual wood substrate, meaning you don't have to have decking down before you install them. You can just go with wood or metal battens, and then the metal can be put directly on top of that, which can cut cost on framing. I will warn you though, if you don't have a wood substrate underneath the battens, it's going to be a good bit louder when it storms and when it rains. Just the sound of it hitting the metal is going to echo a little bit more. When you don't have the battens on there and you're just doing a direct to deck, it can be a similar scenario. If you don't have the battens on top of the wood straight, meaning you put your plywood down and then you just install everything direct to deck is what we call it, meaning it's substrate, underlayment, and then the metal. As long as the attic is ventilated properly and you have a lighter color metal, you usually don't run into any additional issues and it's a perfectly fine install. A lot of the times we do direct to deck, and again, as long as you're adhering to those previous things I mentioned as far as good ventilation and lighter colors, you're going to be fine. If you're going with a darker color, it may behoove you to go with battens on top of the wood substrate that's already existing to create a little bit more of an air gap, and it's also going to be a little bit quieter because now you have that gap between the metal and the decking itself. As far as underlayment goes, that's going to be the material you put underneath the panels. So you can use quite a variety. As long as it's a steep slope, you can use synthetic felt's what I recommend over asphalt felt. Even if you're using battens over a wood substrate, you still need to put the substrate down, the underlayment down, then the battens, then your panels. If you're doing a direct-to-deck application, I usually recommend going with a self-adhering membrane, and you definitely want to use a high temp. One of the biggest mistakes people use is they want to go with the self-adhering membrane because it is a superior product to your regular felt and synthetic felts a lot of the time. But if you're doing a direct to deck, that metal can get so hot that it'll warp and it'll ruin that self-adhering membrane underneath there. So if you do go with a self-adhering membrane, make sure you're using high temp ice and water. It's built to withstand those temperatures, and it's something that's preferred a lot of the times when you're doing a metal installation. So another thing I did want to mention when it comes to direct to deck installations, this also may be something that you want to do if your roof is very cut up or complex, meaning you have a lot of different gables and hips and you want a cleaner, kind of more seamless appearance. And also if you have a lot of penetrations, like a lot of skylights, a lot of things to kind of build around, adding battens to that's going to add a lot of complexity and could potentially add issues if it's not installed perfectly. So that's really just a quick overview of the different types of metal roofing systems. There is a little bit of a variety, so if you're thinking about making the switch, make sure you talk to a qualified professional that can lead you down the route you want to go, get you that extended warranty, get you that really long-lasting 50-year plus roof, and then making sure it's going to suit your need and there's no surprises like it being louder on a rainstorm. Thanks for watching, guys.